Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I was just at a conference from like Sunday afternoon. We had my daughter's college graduation Sunday morning, celebratory
Congratulations.
lunch. Thank
Yep,
you. And
that's
then
fun.
drove to Chicago, opening party Sunday night, conference all day Monday, Tuesday, drove home yesterday. So I'm like,
Wow. Yeah, right. And rest. Yikes, that's a lot. That's a big
yeah.
schedule.
But
Yeah.
sorry to
No, I was going to
interrupt
say
you.
just graduation alone can be like the
Yeah.
logistics of it. And then to know that you're hot on the heels of that, you have to be on for 3 days is a lot.
Yeah, someone asked me. I moderated a panel on Tuesday on the second day of the
Nice.
conference, which is what I want to talk about. Someone said to me, we were just talking about how we're kind of like worn. It was like the last dinner, the award ceremony of the conference, and everyone's like, oh, I'm so pooped. And my friend Rodrigo said, do you feel like you're extra tired because you moderated that panel? I was like, no, like that was fine. Like that doesn't exhaust. I don't know if this is just me. Like that doesn't exhaust me. What makes me so tired is just I love connecting with people one on one, but having so many one on one conversations, some of them with new people, and you're
Yeah.
learning their name and who they are. And there were people from so many different countries and continents. It
Wow.
was a global conference. So
Okay.
just all of those and you really want to focus and talk to people, and then it's also kind of loud and sometimes there's accents, but like
Right.
all those focused
Right.
one-on-one conversations with so many different interesting people, like that's what drained me way more so than moderating a
Yeah,
panel.
that is being super on. It's not because a panel, you have other people to bounce off of, and there's probably some preparation there too that you're glossing over in terms of your input. But yeah, there's something. And do you find that in those one on one conversations, the listening and the paying attention, like you're trying to add value back too? So it's like a constant, I'm listening and I'm
Processing.
processing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and trying to be intelligent in the that's it. It's the demands on being intelligent is draining.
Well, that's interesting because day two was held at Second City.
Hmm,
And
fun.
as part of being at Second City, we got to be in their auditorium, which was super fun. But then they led us in a 90-minute improv workshop, which thank
Okay.
goodness did not involve us getting up on stage.
I was going to say that could be draining too.
But we just did all of these. We got together in like different groups within the audience over and over again, running little improv exercises. And so much of it was about that, was about like, how do you truly listen to someone and let them contribute while also being able to come up with
Yeah,
what you're going to say
right. Being
next. And
articulate in any way.
yeah,
I find right now it's an on off switch. If I'm listening to you, that's great. And the minute I try to continue to listen and formulate a response, the train is off the tracks.
yeah,
Like I'm like, wait, I lost. What did you just say? So I have to be a little more discerning about it, I guess. But that's really fun.
yeah, it was super fun. It was
That's a
great.
great
It
idea.
was great.
Okay.
Okay, so I moderated a panel. As
Mm.
an aside, the funniest thing, I was on all the emails for the panel and I had shared the questions ahead of time just so everyone could get prepped, and I knew who everyone who was on it, but for some reason, like not until I got up on the stage did I realize I was the only female.
Well, I can see that. You just glossed over names, not really
I
assigning
just
genders. Yeah.
Which is weird because it was like Harry, James, like they weren't like androgynous. Greg.
Wasn't Pat and
Right.
Chris? That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good
Um
that you were the
so that was
female
fun.
voice up there. Yeah.
So one of the topics that we talked about was just the algorithms and how it can be so tricky to what I see on LinkedIn. I tried to man, I'm jumping all over the place. Sorry to everyone. One of the things I tried to do was, as I was coming up with questions, just kind of think about what are the hot topics on LinkedIn that are getting everyone spicy.
Mm.
these days, because that seems to me that's a fun panel because there'll be discussion. So, in that vein, one of the questions I talked about was this trend that I'm seeing where creators are being asked to kind of guarantee their own performance and or be paid based on their performance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of baffling to me just because the algorithms are such a black box. And it's like how the performance of a piece of content is less and less as days go on, has less of a there's less of a direct correlation between quality of content and performance of content. You're really at the mercy of the algorithm. And something, so this one guy in the panel said, you know, they've done all of these studies, and truly, as soon as you add in that sponsored tag,
Mm-hmm.
the reach just tanks.
Plummets.
So, you know, someone's posting content, organic content, million views, you know, 2 million views, million views, and then they post something sponsored and it's like 10,000. Like dramatic difference. So what he said next is what made me nearly fall off my chair. He works mostly, so caveat, he works mostly with really, really, really large kind of celeb type creators, not like Hollywood celeb, social media celeb.
Yeah. Okay.
They are seeing in contracts that some of these creators are saying, I am not going to disclose that this is an ad, and I am not going to use the sponsored tag. And if we get fined by the FTC, I will pay it. And they are putting that in their contract.
For those of you not watching this, just listening, I am making the sourest of faces. Like, there's so much wrong with that. And I don't mean even, let's take ethics out of it. There are assumptions in there that are changing daily. And this is interesting because I was going to suggest to you that we talk about the fact that the Revolve lawsuit that's happening is not the FTC. It is a consumer class action lawsuit.
My response
Yeah.
was that it's not just the FTC. Like, you can get sued by consumers for being deceptive.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So do you have more?
Had you heard of that before? He was like, yeah, that's happening. Like, he kind of positioned it as like, yeah, this is the thing.
I have not heard that before.
No.
No. And it's really fascinating that you bring this up today because I've had a week of talking to legal minds in the mix of digital influencer creator marketing and how nascent that type of law still is in some ways, or how, you know, those folks, those experts are trying to navigate the traditional frameworks of contracts and partnerships versus what you just said. What lawyer in their right mind would let that pass? And I've got to believe that there's no protection for the brand there whatsoever, even if it's in a contract. So what? The brand still has to insist on it.
Well, and it's the brand. If there's an agency involved, it's the agency, it's the influencer. I mean, and take away the dollar amount of the fine, which if some of these creators are offering to pay it themselves, it leads me to believe this fine is not high enough. But
or maybe they're counting on insurance.
I mean, what about the profile getting taken down for violating the terms of the platform?
Right. It is simply the wrong way to approach a problem or challenge that's not going to go away. I think it's more about, and maybe you don't want to go into this yet, but it's more about rejiggering expectations. Like, we know a sponsored post is not going to get the same view. So just let's factor that into our vetting and into our KPIs and reporting and what we're forecasting will happen there.
I also have to question why. I mean, the fact that sponsored content has been getting throttled is not new.
Right.
This is not new information. This is why we include paid amplification on all of our content or expect the brand to do so. Right. I mean, it's just kind of like not really the cost of doing business.
It's table stakes.
As my brother would say, it is what it is.
Right.
You just, as my brother, many other people say that, but we all tease my brother because it's like every other sentence. Like, that's just how it goes. And so you adjust yourself. You don't like skirt the law. Like, the whole thing was so preposterous.
It is
to me.
preposterous. Did anybody else weigh in? Because I know what your take is, and you and I want to still talk about that, but did anybody else there stand up for ethics or morality or the law?
I mean, we were kind of all like, what, huh?
Ooh, creative.
There's also like you're sitting on a stage and someone is like, yeah, this is what's happening now. And like you have that moment where you're like, am I great? Am I living in the dark ages? Like, do I not know what's going on? Am I not the expert
Am I the
here?
only one here that has not heard of this or endorsed this? No, my friend. And again, no other experts piped up, or do they all just like keep quiet, like, mm-hmm.
It was clear none of the rest of us had heard of this. And we were all like, wow,
Right.
that's something.
I think it's also, we'll never know the data behind that. So it could be that that agent, is it a talent management agency that reported that? Like maybe they're endorsing this.
It's a creator agency affiliated with a larger non-creator agency.
Okay, okay, embedded inside. So it might be that one or two people have tried this. I wouldn't say that it's a widespread. I
Yeah.
think that would be
And
very
maybe it's like, don't you find in the creator world stuff, like their stuff is very clicky and trendy within certain, like that could be a thing. Like maybe that's a thing with like the dude bros. Or like
right,
maybe that's a thing within a category that we don't often play
right.
in.
Yes,
Like if
absolutely.
I hire Andrew Huberman tomorrow, maybe he'll pull this nonsense.
Right. And that is such a great, like, sort of thread into what I am seeing going on these days, and you are too, where influencer marketing seems to be confused with paid digital ad buy, growth marketing, performance marketing. And
Performance.
so, yes, I think as we lean more into that conversation, then it all becomes numbers. Like numbers can solve everything. So if the number is the fine and I make more from this than the fine is, then the numbers all just will work them. It is what it is. They'll work themselves out.
Yeah.
Whereas I come from a land where influencer marketing is so much more rich and robust and relational, and the benefits of it have a correlation to numbers. Certainly, there's reporting data and there's reach and impressions. But for instance, we finished a program with a global client, healthcare practitioners, and now we know because we facilitated this, that client tapped into one of the influencers for their campaign to support that influencer's further work in the world. So the brand is getting exposure in this really aligned online summit for healthcare practitioners. And there might be another 30 healthcare practitioners involved in that summit that they're supporting. And that's a new pipeline of talent and expertise for that global brand. And do you see what I'm saying? Like, none of that is reflected in the impressions, reach, and engagement rates of either the influencers or the program, but it's clearly of value, and we knew it would be to that client
Yeah.
to extend their footprint, to create more relationships, to build their community. And so, yeah, the dude bro thing, or the anytime that numbers can solve it, I think we're just having a different conversation.
Well, and I mean, the problem here is that the algorithm is punishing this content because the platforms want to make money. They have set up the algorithm to punish that sponsored content because they want you to amplify, which sucks in its own way. But if you put that aside, to respond to that, which is purely a financial thing, with something that's evasive and that is,
Risky.
well, risky, but tricking the consumers and not honest. Like there's study after study that's been done that shows that just because a piece of content is sponsored doesn't make it any less effective. The example that you gave is a great example of this. The fact that this practitioner is being sponsored by that brand is not, that's not a drawback in any way. It's a like a symbiotic relationship that makes sense, and everyone needs to make money, and that's fine. And it's, but to to respond to this algorithm thing that's like purely because the platforms want to make money with this response that's so dishonest and evasive and harmful to consumers and deceptive. That's the word my brain was trying to find. It just opens up so many other problems there, and I think it hurts us. Like, it hurts us as an industry because the implication there is that you have to hide the fact that there's a sponsorship, and I don't want to be involved in an industry where what I'm doing is this dirty thing that needs to be hidden.
Right. There's so many layers there. And I don't want to work with creators or influencers who take that approach to their work in the world, because I'm leaning into them because of their equity with their consumer, their audience, the trust that they've built.
It's like so disrespectful of this community. I mean, we work with influencers because ultimately it's because they've built a community and they have this trust. And if they're being dishonest with that community, how strong is it really?
Right. And I was prepared to come into this conversation and talk about the class action lawsuit in the broader sense of the other LinkedIn hot button issue right now is influencers are dead. Influencer marketing is dead, which I don't have the time or energy anymore to keep fighting in the comment sections of those posts.
It's just like link bait or clickbait
It
or
is
some kind of bait.
And so maybe down the road, you and I will talk about real indications of what's dead and what's not. So I was thinking about the Revolve class action lawsuit.
Will you fill everyone in on what that is if they've missed that news?
Yes, as well as I can. Revolve is a fashion brand.
It's like for young whippersnappers.
They have been partnering with influencers, but not disclosing, basically. And
for years.
Yeah. Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know that I just know the salacious headlines, but basically avid, I would say, fans or consumers of that brand realized that influencers were promoting certain items that the consumer then went on to purchase. And in hindsight realized, oh, that person was paid to promote that. It wasn't just, an affinity for it or whatever. I haven't read the brief, the lawsuit, but they banded together and said, we would not have paid this money for this item, I think, if it had been disclosed, or we at least deserve for it to be disclosed, I think is more.
So this is not a $40,000 fine coming from the FTC. This is a multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit coming from the consumers who are being deceived, who were deceived.
Right. And we know that, in the US especially, we're a litigious bunch. So if one lawsuit makes it through, there will be others that look like this and folks will kind of follow the money. But to me, this is proof that consumers absolutely know what's going on with sponsored content and don't mind it. They actually want it. They want it to be clear. They want to be able to make informed decisions for themselves about the content that they're seeing. Not a sign that influencer is dead or influencing or influencers are dead, but rather they're being held accountable by their audience to do it right, to do it in a non-deceptive fashion, in a very transparent, direct fashion, no pun intended. And further, I think there's some scrutiny that needs to come into where consumers are connecting with those influencers, because if it's just in that one post that the algorithm picks up and shoots out, then it's a different life cycle than if this is somebody you have built affinity for and you follow them. You've talked about a couple of people that you love and you just follow that, you just like their stuff. So that I think needs to be addressed. And the last point I'll make about this is long form content. I firmly believe we need to get back there. We need for the influencers to own their platforms and have social media as a plus up, as a nice to have, but we've shifted so much in the last 5 years to just exclusively social media. We're at the mercy of the algorithms. Okay, it is what it is. This is the theme. You got to title this episode, It Is What It Is, because this is the ecosystem that we're working in. Let's address it without having to be deceptive. But I think one thing is to recognize that the algorithm, this social media platforms will continue to want their slice of the pie, and they're going to throttle anything that threatens that. Fine. Let's figure out a different way to reach your audience and nurture that audience. We've been doing it for 20 years, so let's keep doing it.
But that's why we keep talking about this, but that's why I'm just so baffled I see dozens of posts every day talking about the creator responsibility for the performance of their content, and I just think, like, it makes no sense to me at all. I think creators can be responsible for the quality of their content. I think they can't phone it in. I think they can't. We once had a blogger we were working with back in like 2013, 2012 or something. And we hired her for one cleaning product. And then 6 months later, we hired her to promote a different cleaning product from a different company. And she did a find replace on the exact same blog post
You're kidding. Well,
and
that's
was so gobsmacked that we had an issue.
so there was a point in time to your revelation there where we would indicate, does this need to be fresh content or can it be content that's already
Yeah,
archived and
we've
that you're
done things like
refreshing?
that too.
Yeah.
Like we used to very often sell a program for blog posts where we would hire bloggers to take an unbranded blog post and then retroactively brand it, which I think like that's all out in the open and honest, and that's what we were asking for. What
Yeah.
this woman did was
No,
beyond the pale.
not the same.
So to my
Yeah.
point, like there's a lot of things that creators should be responsible for: getting content in on time, being honest and authentic in what they're saying, not promoting something that they actually hate, doing quality work, doing work that's in line with the work they've done previously, like a whole long list of things.
Right.
But the actual reach of that content, they don't have that control.
Yeah. So you're feeling like as soon as they press publish, it's sort of out of their
Yeah.
hands, it's out of your hands, other than as a paid then endeavor, as a paid function. Yeah. What would happen? I mean, this is, again, I think it's because we've got newer players, we've got people who are so numbers focused, and numbers feel good because that you can justify them at the end of the day. You can, line them up and they either match or don't match. And it takes a lot more qualitative analysis to showcase the benefits of a program if you can't just line item numbers. So
Yeah.
I think it's that lean into performance metrics, ad buy, and trying to marry those two things together. How are you handling that internally in conversations with clients? Are you able to shift their perception, or do you just happen to work with clients that get it?
I mean, well, we guarantee results on our end. I think the distinction for me is that as an agency that's pulling in multiple creators, as long as if it's organic only, we only guarantee organic results, and we base that on benchmarks that we've gathered
Right.
over our 14 years, and we're conservative.
I was going to say, and it's
And we
much more
hope to
conservative.
exceed them, and we always hold aside a little extra budget coming out of our margin in case we have to pull in an extra creator or hire someone to post again, because sometimes no matter how conservative you are, no matter how much back data you have, sometimes the algorithm just screws you over, and stuff just doesn't, or sometimes stuff just doesn't resonate.
Right. Right.
But when we are including paid amplification, we guarantee those results as well. And again, we're pulling on benchmarks, and we know what levers we can pull to make content perform. And then probably once or twice a year, we do have to dip into our margin to kind of add a little bit of extra boosting, because again, for some reason, it still just wasn't enough. But
I'm always trying to find the business case behind these requests or these expectations and demands. And so when I think of somebody who's going to blame the creator influencer for not delivering, I try to pull back the curtain and think, what is that internal brand person facing from their stakeholders, their team? And we had talks about this at Nimbus, compensation frameworks, and feeling like it's all over the place, whether it is or isn't, just the feeling, the impression that it is. I think that's part of the downstream outcome of screw influencers who don't hit their performance benchmarks because blah, blah, blah. They already started mad at them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're already and this is the report that I'm putting out actually talks about this, that the perception of this being chaotic, the pricing structures and compensation frameworks being like totally chaotic and unpredictable, sets us all up then for not trusting the results when we see them. And I think what you're talking about is one indication or symptom of that. Whereas if we dialed it in the beginning and had really clear Not necessarily, that doesn't mean predictable and it doesn't mean repeatable pricing, but if we understood the front end of it better, I think then that back end wouldn't be so fraught.
Yeah.
That's just my guess.
Indeed. Okay. Well, this was fun.
Yeah. Woo. Woo. You pulled an audible and I love it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Always good to chat with you.
Yes. And we will be back next week. Thanks.
Good. Bye.